Yeah, we had another question from Jacqueline here today. She's asking, if you were building a company now, what area would you focus in? So to narrow it down a bit, what are, in terms of VR, AR, mixed reality, what's the most promising area you're seeing, or you think will be the most promising in your industry, for example, in the next 5 years, maybe?
I'm seeing quite a few startups that we're working with right now that are ISE. One of them, we didn't even know there was really just 3 people, right? So clearly, a startup, and I would say is be as vertical as possible. Number one, so for your final output. The other is actually, I'm contradicting myself as I'm saying it, but also partner with folks too as well. So in one circumstance, we actually have 3 companies working together on one, I would say, final output. They all have specific products. One of them actually creates content. One of them helps us create content on our own so that my sailors will be able to create scenarios. And the other one is using reflective reality, which I think is going to be really, really cool. It's kind of like a dome. You may have seen it in one of my videos, right? So they're all working together. I mean, funny enough, they're all in the same town, Montreal. But what I'm getting at is partner, first of all, really create some good friendships. You might merge, you might not, you might, bandwagon off of people, they might know different people, and also have that market identified, that with, frankly, almost as a bond, as a sale, right? Like, hey, X amount of things if you do this, and it ain't so hard to get that. And also, I would say from a government perspective, the easiest way to get in with this is a SOSA. A SOSA is a standing offer supply arrangement, right? Those are services type money, and it's not capital money or a separate pot of money. So if whatever business you're creating is creating a service, even though if you actually have a capital asset, but you're providing those services to us, for this federal government is the easiest way to actually get into contract, frankly. But if you're just selling a ship, well, then that's a hard good, and we're going to go through that process. We have our own rules. But if you're saying, hey, my service is to, as a SaaS organization, way easier, and Public Works, frankly, is actually coming up with a lot of new mechanisms for SaaS cloud procurement. So we're even changing how we do our own procurement, or even Azure credits and whatnot. So really, I would say focus on those elements. If you're VR, AR, don't sell me an Oculus Rift or whatever. Like, we can get those anywhere. Over.
Yeah, I'll just give my 2 cents really quick here on the areas I would think about starting a new company. Is that there's a lot of technology that's out there, from the hardware to the software and so forth, and I would look at a way to merge them together. Because if we look at the technology, the value of technology is how you combine all these different technologies to solve a future problem. So I think there's be something interesting there on various different aspects. The other aspect I think that we're seeing more apparent right now is the distributed environment, the collaboration communication, and how we're going to communicate virtually, but make it feel like we're together. So those are the kind of the areas that would probably be interesting, and it would be I think valuable for a business to provide.
I can only agree with that. I mean, even from an academic standpoint, I'll just point out that collaborations in the virtual reality space, or doing simple things like a user study, having somebody else try a virtual reality system during COVID was a major problem for us, right? And so we actually came up with several ways to come around that. Shipping headsets is just the obvious solution, right? But if you can afford it, right? That's a question here, right? But there's various protocols that we've developed for that. Now, luckily enough, we're in operation again, and so we're now continuing to do user studies in our lab, and so that has changed. But collaborating through virtual reality is a very powerful, or augmented reality is a very powerful thing, not just for training, right? I'm looking at, I showed very briefly that application with the data analytics. One thing that we have done is, and I didn't have the time to show this, is we have had 2 people stand in front of a touchscreen and basically manipulate the data directly, right? And in a very simple way. And if anybody's interested, I can post that. But the power is actually having people to work together, and you can do the same thing through virtual reality at a distance, and that makes it possible to collaborate, to expand vastly the network of people you can work with together and have discussions, productive discussions, say, how does this affect our maintenance costs or whatever, right? All of these discussions can happen even at a distance today on the topic, directly showing in situ, in the model, right there. Where I rip out my headset, I'm sorry about that. Whoops. Right there, where you do it in real life, but you can't travel or it's hard to travel. So you can do it the same way, right? It's a mix the real and the virtual. That's very, very powerful. Sorry.
I would suggest to anybody that's thinking of this particular area that one of the first things you need to do is give yourself a really good grounding in either Wolfgang at SFU or with the UMB Human Computer Interface Lab or Interaction Lab, whichever one you want to call it, and really sort of look at how things are changing in the way that we do what Wolfgang just said, how we handle data, and how this actually interacts with that, so that you've got a really clear understanding of how to create things which don't impose cognitive burden on the user. Because what we're seeing lots of different solutions which are coming into the market, which is simply just some of them are just simply computer solutions for computer solutions' sake. They don't really take into consideration that mantra that so many companies have, which is our most important asset is our people. Well, if your most important asset is your people, design stuff for your people that helps them to do their job more effectively. And you can only get that if you just take that little bit of a step back. So that would be my first piece of advice. If I was to look at a technical area where I think that will really blossom in the next 10 years, and particularly in the augmented mixed reality space, it's haptics. It's the other senses. So we're really good with augmented and mixed reality at the moment. We're really good with oral. We're really good with visual. And we've got a little bit of some of the other senses, but it's those other really powerful senses that are going to be integrated at convergence points in the technology roadmap down the line, which help people to really interact. And I don't know what those are at the moment, but I know that's an area where there's going to be, whether it's sensory gloves that give you a feedback when you're doing things in an augmented reality environment, or whether it's additions to oral guidance and so on. So that's the kind of areas where I would say from an easy reach perspective, and then the big area is going to be how we start to handle that a massive amount of data to bring it into the augmented mixed reality space and make sure that it doesn't become overpowering again. It's not just about the user interface. It's also about how much data you're trying to give people for them to ingest as well. So handling of the data as well. Those are the areas that I would suggest.
Really quickly on that, Duncan, we did drop 3 haptic projects because it just wasn't there. Right, it was just too cumbersome. So if anybody was starting, if it's an emerging field or whatever, for training purposes, we were looking for it. We're still looking for it, and frankly, we've just been disappointed every time. We're like, hey, not ready yet. Park it. It's in the back of our mind. Yeah,
I get a lot of feedback still from my colleagues who are still in the British Army, and on the virtual reality training side, or some of it a little bit augmented reality side. They say it's great for training soldiers, for instance, but when you take soldiers that have been run through programs where they learn in a virtual reality environment and then put them into the real environment of training, so live training. They just can't cope. The muscle memory in particular and the triggers that they need in order to be able to do their tasks effectively simply aren't there. And we see this all the time. Again, it comes back to one of those points that I know I made and a couple of other people made earlier on, is that what we see are the bells and whistles. We see things which are in the news reports or the 30-second video clips which show people doing things like it's already in service and it's already being used, and it's being used to train everybody to do everything, you know, whether that's from my perspective, you know, stack drills or section attacks or whatever it is. But the reality is it doesn't cover that last mile. Again, Maze, to your comment earlier on, there's a little bit of a gap there yet for us to be able to cross. And I know that's specific to my own field of experience and knowledge, but I think it applies in a whole lot of other areas as well.